Hello YouTube, Scamp the Wolf here, back with another video for your viewing pleasure, and I haven't done one of these in a while. I'm going to be ranking the Sevendust discography, worst to best. Now, I'm not including anything that's like acoustic albums, so the Time Travelers and Bonfires albums are not going to be on this. I'm not going to include anything from like solo projects like Clint Lowry or anything like that, or Morgan Rose. I'm just going to include the studio albums. The 13 studio albums that they have, because technically Time Travelers and Bonfires doesn't count, but it's a solid album, like acoustic, like renditions and all that stuff, very good. So I'm not including it on the list, but I don't know. So yeah, let's get on to the list, and I think this one is a little bit obvious if you know me at all. um what I have at number 13, since they have 13 albums, I'm gonna go with Next as their weakest album in my opinion. This album just has never really interested me all that much. It's a very mediocre album for Sevendust, I think. It's a very mediocre album. And I think principally it's because Clint Lowry wasn't in the band. Maybe that could be a reason. But even like with that, like it just there's just something about this album that it has never like piqued my interest that much. Yeah, you have Hero, Ugly Pieces, like those 3 tracks, but the rest of the album is just so forgettable to me. Like it's just like, like I just remember all the tracks sounded pretty much the same. Like, and like they wanted to go a little heavier and stuff. Like that's good. They've done that well before. Like this wasn't really the time to do it, in my opinion. Like tracks like the last song really bogged this album down, in my opinion. I don't really remember much about this album, Next. And that's a shame because it's a red album cover. I mean, I'm a sucker for red album covers, but like, come on, don't judge a book by its cover. This is not a bad album. It's good enough, I guess. But in terms of Sevendust, this is their weakest. That's all I gotta say. Next up, this one might be a shocker. This one, Chapter 7, Hope and Sorrow. Again, I don't really remember as much from this album. Principally because there's just not a lot to this album, in my opinion, compared to other Sevendust works. I definitely remember songs like The Past, Prodigal Son, some other tracks too, Inside maybe, Hope. I mean, the guest appearances on here, Mark Tremonti, Chris Daughtry, even Miles Kennedy, those are memorable, I guess. But the rest of the album is just typical Sevendust. And I mean, like, this was when Sonny Mayo left the band. So, I mean, this is his last album with the band. I mean, which is, like, which was coming because he did not have a lot of macho bravado, I guess. He did not have a lot of, like, nearly as much talent, I guess, as Clint Lowry, sorry. I cannot talk. But, yeah, I don't remember much from this album. Like, not that any tracks are bad. It's just, like, any of the tracks that I can't remember are bad. It's just that they blend right in with the wind, basically. So, kind of like this album cover. Like, the wind, like, is just the songs on the album kind of flying by. Whatever, and this is me listening to it. Like, I'm not amused. Whatever. So, yeah, Chapter 7, Hope and Sorrow. Not the best Sevendust album, in my opinion. Same goes for this album, and this one might be a little bit of a shock. Blackout the Sun. And I think principally the production is an issue on this album. I don't think the producer of this album which is Mike Ferretti, basically. I don't think his production style, like the production on this album, is that good. It's kind of muddy, and even beyond that, like, this is kind of just like a neutered album, basically, after coming off a Cold Day Memory, which we'll get to later. This is kind of just like mid, in my opinion, nowhere near as essential, like, as that album was. And like I said, we'll get to it on the list. But yeah, And again, just like with other Sevendust albums, the other two, it's not nearly as memorable. I mean, Mountain Till Death, those songs kind of memorable. Memorable, kind of memorable. I thought Blackout the Sun, the title track, was kind of memorable. Of course, everybody knows Decay from this album. The rest of the album just doesn't really do that much for me, to be honest. As much, like, it's kind of a letdown to me. Like, I mean, it's good. I don't think Sevendust has really made a bad album per se, but there's a lot of mediocre stuff on there, in their discography. This is definitely one of those albums. It's just not really their best album in my opinion. Like, it's just, again, very mediocre. I mean, like, of course, if they ride the same wave over and over again, like, they're opportune to, like, I don't know what I'm trying to say. They have a good chance at, like, falling a little bit flat on that. And, like, there are 3 examples so far where that's been the case, where it hasn't worked as effectively as other times. So, it's a hit or miss, basically. That's Blackout the Sun. Next up on the list, Blood and Stone. Again, kind of typical for Sevendust. Kind of typical material. I mean, like, not a lot of stuff really, like, just jumps out at me about this album, other than tracks like Dying to Live. I guess Feel Like Going On. I kind of remember What You've Become, I guess. And of course, The Day I Tried to Live, the cover song that was like a single and stuff. Yeah, this album really just, I have not really come back to this album as much since it came out. Like, which again is basically like the other 3 albums. It's basically like kind of mid-tier Sevendust. It's on their lower tier for me. Like, surprisingly that I do have this above Blackout the Sun, but really they're just the same to me. Like, they came off of an album that was really good, and this is kind of like the aftermath of that. So, I mean, it's kind of unfortunate, but I mean, whatever. But Blackout the Sun, I mean, not Blackout the Sun, Blood and Stone, like, again, good album, it's just not one of their best. Definitely not one of their best. Next up, we have Alpha, and this is definitely the best of Sonny Mayo's time in the band. Definitely, for sure. Because I feel like this album has a little bit more going for it. Especially doing a 9-track song with Burn and other tracks on here like Driven, Under, other tracks, I guess Death Star. But this does kind of also, like, exhibit a similar problem to the other Sonny Mayo albums. And that's, there's not, like, a lot that's different about this album. Like, basically the guitar tuning. Like, the guitar tuning on most of these songs is pretty much the same. It's the same, like, B note. Like, B minor for, like, a lot of songs on here. Like, which is kind of something that I noticed a lot in the Sonny Mayo, that all of them were tuned exactly the same. They kind of sounded the same. Like, it's not really much to the imagination. But, yeah, it's a solid album again. Like, I feel like it's a little bit better. The highlights on here are better than the highlights on those other 2 albums. The other 4 albums, should I say. Like, because I really like Driven and Under. Those 2 songs, I like those a lot. And Burn is a very good, risky song to make. So, yeah, that's Alpha by Sevendust coming in at its position. Now we get into the good stuff from Sevendust. This one here, Kill the Flaw. This one's kind of underrated. I don't see a lot of attention driven toward this album, which is funny because, like, I remember Thank You, like, peaking higher on the charts and stuff. Like, I remember that album, but I guess this album kind of slipped off in favor of other albums in their catalog, but this one's not a sleeper. This one's not to sleep on. Like, I mean, it's produced by Mike Ferretti again, but I think the production's a little bit better on here, and there are some genuine great songs on here. Like Not Today, that is definitely one of Sevendust's best songs in my opinion. And there's a lot of other good tracks on here too. I remember Thank You, which is okay. Death Dance, um, I remember Chop, Cease and Desist. Like all these songs are pretty good. Again, it does kind of fall in some areas where it's like, okay, this is similar to what we've already heard and stuff like that. But man, Not Today is a really good song, so it kind of makes up for it. And I feel like this album is underappreciated, basically. Like, it doesn't get as much attention compared to other albums on the list. So, yeah, so if you're sleeping on this album, give it a shot, because it's really good, in my opinion. It's a very good album. Seek it out. Kill the Flaw by Sevendust. Next up, we have All I See Is War. Again, very good album. Put Sevendust kind of on the right track in terms of creativity and things like that. I don't have the slip cover. That is like one of the parts of it's like ripped off, but so this is what you're gonna have to deal with. So yeah, definitely some memorable tracks in here. Dirty, Medicated. I remember hearing Medicated at the gym that I went to. I was surprised. I was like, wow. Like, that's not often you hear something like... They usually play, like, pop music, but they played Sevendust. I'm like, wow. That's something. Dirty, Medicated. Sickness is a really underrated Sevendust song, I think. Very good. Moments is a good track. Not original. Yeah, there's just a lot of good stuff. I mean, there's some mediocre stuff, like Life Deceives You and The Truth and Cheers, but even those like are forgivable because the rest of the album is very good. Not one of their best, but still very good. So, and it's their debut on Rise, which now they're not on Rise, they're on Napalm now, which is still a good record label to be on, but I mean, regardless, this is a good album. Sevendust, All I See Is War. Now we're going back to their original material here. Many of you might be surprised to have it this low on the list, and that's because it is what it is. So we got their first album, their self-titled Sevendust, and this is basically higher than All I See Is War and stuff, all that stuff, because of like the influence of this album, I guess, how important it is in Sevendust's discography, because this is their first album. The reason I can't get into this one as much as I can the others is because it is their first album. It is their young, budding, all that stuff. Like, and it's not like produced with the same amount of like energy as their other albums that they have in their that they had like after that. So, but it's still a good album. It's still very promising. It showed a very promising band on here. Like tracks like Black and Bitch, the two opening tracks, Terminator, those are memorable. Basically, the first 4 tracks are very memorable. Then it gets to the other tracks, and it's still very good, in my opinion. Born to Die is very good with that like drum performance and stuff. I mean, like you could tell this band was gonna go somewhere. It's a very unique album in their discography, like, and it's just a very good album. Very hits hard, in my opinion. I think this album is very solid. Definitely give it a listen if you haven't already. So yeah, that's Sevendust. That's their debut. Next one, this is kind of obvious. Cold Day Memory. Easily a great album to start the top 5 best, in my opinion. This was my first Sevendust album, and it was like a year after it came out. And this is a fantastic album. I mean, like, you got several great songs on this album. Several of them. Like, there's a lot of good stuff on here. It has, like, the more, like, heavy moments of like their Sunny Mayo era with like songs with like double kick and stuff, and like drums and stuff, and like the solos and stuff, which are pretty good with the melody and stuff. Like, I mean, this album has everything that Sevendust does well. Like, and they try different things, and like I feel like this is where they really stepped it up. And it was also Clint Lowry's first album back with the band, so that's a very good like detail right there. Okay, Splinter, good song. Forever, Unraveling, Last Breath. Those four, very good tracks. Confessions Without Faith. Oh man, that song is so good. Love that one. Um, Here Now is good. Better Place, like man, like it hits hard. I think. Like Last Breath is probably my favorite track on the album, but like you should check out Confessions Without Hate. Without Faith, actually, not Without Hate. Sorry. You should definitely check that out. That's a very good song for in that on this album. Karma, Ride Insane. I mean, there's just so much good to this album, like that. Like it's basically given. You need to check this album out. It is very good. It is kind of underrated again, like in terms of like other Sevendust albums. Like I personally think this album easily kills Blackout the Sun. Easily kills that album. Easily kills the Sunny Mayo era, in my opinion, even though I think those albums are solid. But yeah, this album, basically, Cold Day Memory, check it out. Now we get to another surprise. You might be surprised I have this one as high as I do. And we have Truth Killer at number 4. Wow. Their newest album in the top 5? Really? But like, what is going on? I mean, that's not really possible as much for bands nowadays. Their newest is not really their best. But you'll be happy to see why I think this album is good. It's because this is easily one of their best albums, I think. Easily. I mean, like, it's kind of like Cold Day Memory, in my opinion, where, you know, they had like a lot of really good stuff. Like, I mean, this is their best outing with Michael Elvis Basket. Really good, in my opinion. Like, I mean, there's not really a weak moment on this album. Like, I think, like, there's tracks that I'm like, I think, oh, well, that's not as good as the others. Like, I think Leave Hell Behind was that track, if I'm not mistaken. But, like, everything else is so good. Sick Mouth and Superficial Drug, two of the best songs of this year, in my opinion. Like, I can remember the chorus to Sick Mouth, like, that. Very good. Like, even though this album's been out for a week and Sevendust, this is like their 13th album, and it's so good. Like, you have Love and Hate, which is has a good groove to it. Title track. A unique opening track, I Might Let the Devil Win. That one is very unique. Like, and of course you have the singles, Fence and Everything. The first two singles, those are great songs, in my opinion. Like, definitely different, but still sticking with what makes Sevendust good. That is what you want to do as an artist. You want to be familiar, but try new things. And this album does that well. Way better than Blood and Stone. Way better than Blackout the Sun. And even Kill the Flaw. Like, in my opinion. This is how you do it right. Truth Killer, awesome album. Now we're going to get to the obvious ones. The ones that are going to be expected. And at number 3, we have Animosity. Now, a lot of you would put this at number 1, and I wouldn't blame you for that. Like, because, like, Animosity is a very important album in their discography. Like, it introduced a lot more melody in comparison to, like, other albums. Like, basically set the groundwork for what was to come with this band. Like, definitely. Like, there's definitely some iconic songs on this album that I think are worth giving a shot. There's longer songs on here which are fantastic. Songs like Trust are great. TOAB is a very good opener. I love that song. And then there's, like, iconic stuff like Praise. Xmas Day, or Christmas Day, whatever you want to say, Angel Sun, Live Again. Those songs are fantastic. I love those songs. There's Follow as well. And that has Aaron Lewis stand on it, and like Aaron Lewis is great on that track. Like I know a lot of people don't like Aaron Lewis, but he's great on that song. I think. I think he does a good job on that album, on that song actually. Like, and there's other great songs. Dead Set, very good. And there's others too that like. I guess why I put it above the two that I have on top is because I don't really think this album is nearly as memorable, and I haven't listened to this album nearly as much as the other two on the list. But yeah, in my opinion, this is like top notch of the nu metal era. Definitely one of the best nu metal albums of 2001, and definitely one of the best albums of that era. Sevendust is definitely fantastic on this album, and yeah, check this out. This is definitely a good starting point for Sevendust. Now, what albums do I have on top of Animosity? I guess it really doesn't matter what you put, as long as it's their first four albums, I guess, even though like the first one is like kind of like not on the mountain, like the summit of my list, but basically these two albums I could put like side this, I could put like, I could flip flop and say that like one is number one, one's number two, and all that stuff. I could say like anything I want basically about like the next albums that are on the list. But here we have Seasons at number 2. This is a fantastic album. I've probably like played this one so much. Like when I got it, like this is a great album. Easily one of their best, in my opinion. This is more melodic and shorter than Animosity. Like, but I still think they really did a good job on this. They nailed it here with the melody, with this, like even some of the heavier moments on the album. They did a fantastic job on this album. I do think Enemy is kind of overrated, I think, but like there's so many good songs on this album that it's like kind of like, oh, okay, whatever. Like, you have Disease and you have Disgrace, which are two of their best songs. Seasons, Broken Down, again, two of their best songs. Like, this has some of their best work on it. Like, honestly, like, Separate is a great song. Skeleton Song is definitely very emotive with its, like, acoustics and stuff. Like, a good ballad. Like, even some of the, like, lesser seeked out songs, like Burned Out, Gone, hit hard on this album. Face to Face, of course. Like, who could forget about that? Like, this is a very good album. This is very, like, I mean, they basically, like, did the best job that they could on this album, and it's very good. And it's a very fantastic album. Like, basically, again, top tier for nu metal. One of the best albums of 2003. Probably even the best. Who knows? But yeah, that's Seasons for you. And again, I will say what's at number 2 and what's at number 1 to flip flop around, and you probably know what's at number 1. I mean, like, this could be easily number 2 or number 1 because I cannot really decide which album, like, which of these albums. Like, I had a hard time deciding which one would be number 2 or number 1. But like this one, I'm just gonna go with this one right now because I think this album's fantastic. There's barely anything wrong with this album. I got here Home by Sevendust, which is crazy. I never really thought this would be my favorite. Like, because I always put Animosity or Seasons, but like this is on top. Principally because it is easily the, like, it's so good. I mean, you got like, I mean, the iconic tracks, of course, Denial, Waffle, which are very good. Have a lot of groove to them. This album has so much groove to it, along with its like heavy nu metal stuff, which is so good, so addicting. Like, you have Home, the title track, good. And no, this album's not number 1 because Chino Moreno from Deftones is on it, on the track Bender. It's because this is a great album. That's not really why I have it at number 1. And that song's good too, Bender. I like that one. uh, like Head Trip, Reconnect. Even though those two songs I think sound very similar to each other, there's both rhythms on both tracks phenomenal. I think very good. The production's awesome. I love Andy Wallace. I love his mixing. I love Toby Wright. To be honest, I love like Andy Wallace does a fantastic job on this album with the mixing. Like Head Trip on tracks like Head Trip, Reconnect, Rumblefish, probably my favorite Sevendust song to be honest. Like, which is so good. Like so, Licking Cream, Crumble, other good songs. Feel So, again, Benter, great songs. The only song I'm kind of like on is Grasp, but even that is like a good song in comparison to like other albums that have like there are other albums that have like weaker songs. Grasp is like better than anything on Alpha in my opinion. Alpha and Under as far as this list goes. So yeah, Home by Sevendust definitely their best, and I would probably say this would be tied with Seasons to be honest because they're very close. They're like this close. They're like that close together. But I mean, like you listen to them, you'll find out for yourself why this is such a fantastic album. Because Home, this is a good starting point for set. This is like definitely a good starting point along with Seasons. Like, what an amazing 3-album streak that some of us had with Home, Animosity, and Seasons. And I think really that's what matters here is that streak is so good. Like it really is like better than what most bands can do nowadays, really. So yeah, there you go. That's my list. So what do you think about all the albums here? What do you think about Sevendust? What do you think about these albums? Which one is your favorite? Which one is your least favorite? Right here, which one's in the middle? Everywhere in between. Which one's underrated, overrated? I don't know which one would be their most overrated one. I don't know. Like, I would really have to think about that, to be honest with you. Probably Black Out the Sun. I don't know. Probably Black Out the Sun, but even that one's good. I don't think they've made a bad album. So yeah, that's pretty much it for this long video here. So leave your thoughts and comments and all that good stuff in the comments section down below. This is Camp the Wolf signing out. Take care.